Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming today. We particularly want to welcome those of you who are speaking languages other than English, particularly languages such as Spanish and Korean, since that is what we are offering today for interpretation. Before we get started officially, I would like to invite those of you who are English speakers, who are understanding me, to choose your language at the bottom, go down to interpretation and click on English. It's important that everyone does this because we're going to be having times where people will be asking questions in languages other than English. You will not be able to hear the interpretation if you are not in the English channel. For those of you who speak Spanish, I would like to ask Lorna, our interpreter, to please say in Spanish how to get the interpretation. Go ahead, Lorna. Thank you so much, Lorna. Helen, can I ask you to come on to the English channel or the general channel and explain in Korean how to use the interpretation? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Helen. So we're going live on Facebook right now, and I'm just sharing it. If any of you want to share this live broadcast on your Facebook pages, you can go to the Disability Voices United Facebook page, and you can, oh, we're hearing feedback from me, and you can just click on share with this live broadcast. So let's get started. I see a lot of new people here today. Super excited that you're with us. My name is Judy Mark. I am the president of Disability Voices United. I'm the parent of a person in the self-determination program. And you may hear him coming in at some point. He sings really, really loud. So I apologize if you hear his singing at some point. We meet every, right now we're meeting every week. So we're going to go relatively soon to every other week for a little while, just because this is a lot for us to manage. But we are an organization that is directed by and for people with disabilities and their family members. We have no conflicts of interest. We are not people who work in the system. We are not paid by the system. We are almost all of us are volunteers, but we do have a wonderful growing staff. And one of those staff are here with me today. I would like to introduce Molly Kennedy, who will be co-presenting with me today. She is the program fellow. Really excited to welcome her to DVU. For those of you who want to be able to ask questions during today's session, you're going to get to know Ed Herzl really well. Ed runs all of our events, all of our online meetings, and Ed is the one putting all the stuff in the chat, and she will be reading off any of your questions that go in the chat. I wanted to mention, Ed, that last week I remember there were a few questions that came in on the Facebook page. I'll try to be monitoring that at some point and try to see if we can get those questions answered too. You'll also be able to ask questions or make comments by going down to the reactions section part of your screen, clicking on raise hand, and you'll see a raise hand like you see over my head. Okay, and we can call on you to speak. So that is the basic way we're going to be running today's session. Molly and I have a presentation for you that we're calling SDP 101. It's a real introduction to the self-determination program that we feel is done in a really easy to understand way. Then it'll probably last for about half of the session, and then we'll take questions from you and any comments that you may be having in the second half of this of our meeting today. And we will likely run out of time for your questions like we do every single week. And so whatever questions we don't get answered, I promise you, we will answer them next week. The other thing that I just wanted to mention before we get started with our presentation is that for those of you who are longtime viewers, participants in our SDP Connects, you will know that we have been very active in the implementation of the self-determination program. We were in fact founded by the people who wrote the self-determination law. And there's a lot of changes that are coming our way on the self-determination program that were implemented in the state budget just in the last couple of weeks. And so we will refer to some of these this afternoon. We will also be referring to them as the weeks go by. I can tell you this, that Disability Voices United is fully committed to the full implementation of this program. And we are here to help. What we are not able to do just because we don't have the staff to do it is to help each individual get into the self-determination program. We do not take individual clients. We are not lawyers who help people in fair hearing. But what we do is we hear your concerns, we see where there may be trends, and then we bring all those things together and we bring that information to the Department of Developmental Services, or DDS. And we show DDS where there may be concerns at the regional center level, at the service provider level, if you're having problems with your FMS, with an independent facilitator. And we will make sure that your concerns are heard at the place where changes can be made, which is at the state level. So I can tell you that this Friday, there is a meeting with the Department of Developmental Services with a small group of folks, of leaders in the self-determination movement, and we will be relaying a lot of the concerns that you've given to us. The other thing I wanted to mention is that DVU is planning to develop a feedback portal. Let me explain what that means, because that's not plain language. We want to hear from you how things are going, if there are concerns, or even if things are going well. And we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like, but we hope to get it up and running in the next few weeks. It will be a way for you to communicate to us directly a story or an issue that concerns you. The reason why we're creating this feedback portal is because many of you, I'm just noticing that Lorna is just coming back in. Ed, you're good. Thank you. Yay. Happiness. Okay. I wanted to make sure we had our interpretation. Excellent. One of the other reasons is because many of you email me your stories and I am so busy. I'm also a volunteer, so I apologize when I don't get back to you, but I'm also a volunteer. But I'm also super busy. I'm working 7 days a week. And I don't always get back to you when I hear your concerns, and yet your concerns are really important. And so this is going to be a much more organized way for you to tell us what's going on with you, and we'll be collecting that information and using that information in our advocacy. So stay tuned. We will be presenting that at some point in the coming weeks, okay? So let's get started, and we promise we will answer as many questions as we can in the future. So let me make sure I am sharing the screen correctly. Ed, are we good here? Are you seeing the right screen?
Looks wonderful.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, so this, as I said, this is SDP 101. And let me move on to the next. Okay. So the first thing I want to make sure everyone knows is where this law came from, because I don't want you to think this is something that was imposed on us or that we weren't part of. In fact, we made this happen. We absolutely made this law happen. There's Harvey and Connie Lapin who are on this call, and I and my husband and several other parents and self-advocates really were the reason why the self-determination law passed. We flooded phone calls to the legislature. We were up there all the time in Sacramento, and it came from us. This is our law. This is our program. And the only reason it is even exists today is because we have been banging on the door of DDS to say this has got to get implemented. The law was passed in 2013. This is a photo that you're seeing of Governor Brown, who signed the law. The individuals in this photo are primarily parents and self-advocates, but the big tall guy on the right side of your photo is Senator Bill Emerson, who was the state senator who authored our bill, and his staff member, Teresa, to his right. And this was such an important day that we got this law signed. You should know that Senator Emerson stays involved in the implementation of this law. In fact, I was just on a meeting with him today about it, and he spent a whole Saturday at my house last week. So we're very excited that he has been such a part of our DVU family. So I'm now going to turn over the next slide to Molly Kennedy. Go ahead, Molly.
Thank you, Judy. So I am going to talk about what self-determination is. And this is from the perspective of a regional center client and their family. So self-determination is all about choice. And it starts with how you choose, you want to choose, how you choose to live your life. So to create a self-determination plan, here are some things that we think will help you to develop a plan that shows who you are and what you want to do. So the first thing I do is I gather my circle of support. And those are people that are close to me, that know me, and that will help me develop a self-determination plan that is about me, that is what I want to do, and they're there to help me do it. As a person in self-determination, I get to decide what services I need and what activities or what things I want to do. For example, if I'm in employment, I want to take a training to help me with my job or a class. If it's living arrangements, where I want to live and what supports I need to live in that situation. Who helps you? Well, a lot of people can help you, but you decide who you want to help you. And it's members of your support circle, it's your regional center coordinator. And when I say you, I'm also meaning families, that if you as a family are part of this. But the individual gets to decide who they want to help them. What the main thing about self-determination is everything needs to be integrated. So to be in this program, you choose services and support that are part of the community. They're not separate and isolated. And one true value of this program is you are part of the community too. And whatever way that looks like and what supports and services you need, that's part of self-determination. Again, it's how you spend your time. It might be hanging out with your friends, going to a restaurant. Well, what do you need to go to the restaurant? You need a caregiver to help you get ready, or transportation. And all that is part of your self-determination services, so you can go. It won't pay for your meal. Let's not get crazy, but it will get you to enjoy a dinner with whoever you want to have dinner with. So self-determination is developed years ago by great people like Judy and Harvey and Connie Layton. It's about the right to plan your own life and make your own decisions. And for everyone at the regional center, that can look very differently, because we're all different individuals. We all have different needs and support, but we all can decide how we want to live our life and what services and supports we need. We have control over where we want to spend our budget, which means the money from regional center that Judy will talk about how that comes about, but what we want to support us. We have control to hire people, to join a community class, to go to the YMCA. We have that decision making that we have. Support. Everyone needs support, whether you have a disability or don't have a disability. It all depends on who you are. And like I said, each regional center client has their own needs, but those needs are based on what they want to do and how they want to do it, not what program they go to. Very different. But with this control in decision making, it comes with the responsibility of we gotta make sure there are decisions and we are contributing in a way we want to our family, to our neighborhood, to our full community. And it just one more time to confirm that you are the ones that need the services. So it's about you and who you are, and you can decide how and what you want to do and the services you need to do them. So one of the key things, and I think a lot of regional centers are telling people to even start creating a self-determination plan to receive the services, you need to create a person-centered plan. And there needs to be a planning process. But again, the planning process is about you, the individual, and how you want to create your plan. What do you need to do to start creating your plan? Well, you can't do it by yourself. And you want to do it with people who are excited about you creating a plan and will support you to implement the goals of the plan. So that's people who you trust, family, friends, whoever you think. People that cannot just say, oh, we'll be at a meeting, but they're there to help you in whatever way you want them to help you with achieving the goals you want. So, like I said, it should be people that you value and they value you. And it's more not a relationship where someone gets paid and they provide you a service. Those people are important, but it should start your support with family, friends, people in your neighborhood, people who own the 7-Eleven that they really know you well because you're there every day. And so your circle of support is people who you know, who you trust, who trust you to make decisions and they support your decisions. And it needs to be not a small group, but really a group that really surrounds you. You know, it should be more than your family. It should be friends and so forth. Now, how does this all happen to create your plan? This is really the funnest part of planning self-determination because it's a blank slate, a blank piece of paper that you start with. And from that, you decide what you're good at, what your goals are, what your gifts are that you want to give back to the community. And then you hold a meeting with your support group, and you might include staff, like a person center planner or independent facilitator, to help you hold this meeting and make sure that this meeting is all about you and your dreams and your hopes and how you want to create goals. And once you create those goals, what services and supports you need that you can fund through your spending plan to achieve their goals. So it's a fun process, and it should be a very fun process to go through. Independent facilitators. These are individuals that have been trained on self-determination. You can hire them, but you don't have to. But they can be very helpful to you. They can help you lead your person-centered plan. They can help you get ready for your community when you meet with your support group. They can help you find people and providers to support what you need when you're ready to enter the service plan and how they are funded under your spending plan. They help develop your spending plan. Once you have your goals and you know what your services and support you need to fulfill their goals, they'll help develop how you need services and how much you pay for those services. And they can help you at an IPP. Like traditional services, you need an IPP for self-determination services, and I think Judy will talk about that. and they can help manage your workers in any way that you need help once you're in the self-determination program. As I said, you are not required, but as I understand it right now, regional centers are now paying $2,500 for transitioning services. So if you want to transition and you want to hire a independent facilitator, there's money to do that. So it's up to you. So if you're not in the program and they're helping you get into the program, they're $2,500. I'm correct about that, right, Judy? Okay. But if
Yes.
you want them to help you when you're in the services, the funding needs to come from your spending plan. So once you're in the services, you have to decide if you need them, what you need them for, and how much of the funding in your spending plan that you will put toward that position. So an independent facilitator cannot provide services if they're already provide like a caregiver or someone like that. They can't be paid already through your IPP because there could be a conflict of interest there. It also cannot be a parent of a child or a spouse of an adult. So if you are a client of regional centers, you can't hire your husband or wife to be your independent facility or your mom or dad. You get to decide who your independent facilitator. There are a lot of people that are being trained, and there's and I think Didi could mention the website when I'm done about where you can go look to find people who do independent facilitators. You can talk to a few of them, interview them, and see which one really fits with what you want to do. So I said, hiring your person-centered, if you want, and it's helpful to have someone to help you create your person-centered plan. Not do it for you, but help support you in how you want to do it. And like I said, if you're not in the program, but you're hoping to get in the program, Regional Center has $2,500 up to hire a person-centered planner. Now it doesn't cost that much to do a plan, but that's how much it is. And there's a code in the traditional system that will be used, 024. So you need to talk to your regional center coordinator saying I'm ready to start planning to go into self-determination services, and I want to use that transitioning funds, and here's how I want to use it. The planner, the person-centered planner, does not have to be vendorized. And what we mean by being a vendor is they've been approved and gone through a long process to be a vendor of regional center. These individuals if they're person-centered planning, they can be used as long as they have experience in doing person-centered planning. So they don't have to be a vendor of your regional center. They just have to be qualified. And again, you want to make sure the person you choose for your planner believes in you and what you want. Is there to help you and not create the plan for you.
Okay, I think I'm taking over from here, right, Molly?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how the sort of mechanics of the program. Remember that the core is very much the stuff that Molly talked about, which is your person-centered plan, your circle of support. That is really the core of the self-determination program. But of course, there has to be a way for you to be able to pay for those services and supports. And this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of barriers come up with people here. So the individual budget is a critical part because it's the amount of money that's available to you from the regional center to implement your person-centered plan and your IPP. It is not the way you're spending your money, but it is just a dollar amount. Always remember, it is just a dollar amount. The amount begins with the amount that was spent on you by the regional center in the previous 12 months in the traditional system, not the previous calendar year, not the previous fiscal year, but the previous 12 months from when you began, from basically when you're starting the negotiation with the regional center. So you immediately should be getting that information from your regional center. I'll talk a little bit more about next steps soon, but you should be getting that information from your regional center about how much has been spent on you in the last 12 months. That amount can be increased or decreased based on your unmet need in the traditional system or a change in circumstance. Next week, we're going to do a session where we get into much more detail on unmet need and change in circumstance. So I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail today, but I'll say it very briefly that a change in circumstance are things that would normally require your budget to change in the traditional system. And when I mean budget, I mean your services. So it could be that you're a young adult leaving the school system and therefore will be relying completely on the regional centers to support you in being in the community. Or it could be that you are very sick and therefore need need nursing services or a lot more assistance. Or maybe you're moving out of your home and moving into your own place and therefore require additional assistance. You should know that your budget could also go down because of a change in circumstance. So let's say you were very sick or maybe having some challenges, and then things improve in your lives. Your budget would go down because of that. And that may happen to some of you. I can tell you it happened to my son many years ago when things really improved in his life. And so his amount of services went down. And so had he been in the regional centers, in the self-determination program, it would have, his budget would have gone down. So I want to let people know that just because you have a budget now, it doesn't mean it's going to stay that high if your life changes. Oh, I should wait. I'm going to go back to unmet need. Unmet need, very briefly, is that the services in the traditional system were not meeting your needs. So things like you were offered a social skills class that you never used because it was very segregated and you didn't like being in a room, that's far away and it was not integrated in the community. That is actually a specific example for my son, that he was authorized social skills a social skills group. He went once, he didn't like it because they were sitting in a tiny little room playing games. He hates playing board games, and they never went out walking in the community. They didn't go to a restaurant. They didn't go to the movies. And those were the things he wanted in his life. So that was a service that was authorized, but never used because it didn't meet his needs. So that's a little example, and we'll get into it much more next week. So you're going to have to go through a budget meeting with your regional center. For timing, sometimes it happens while you're in the person-centered planning process. Sometimes it happens after you get done with your person-centered plan. It really is individualized. I can tell you that for my son, we went to the budget meeting the day after we did my son's person-centered planning meeting. And so we didn't even have the plan done yet. It's just, I knew that those two activities, person-centered planning and budget development, could happen at the same time. So don't think that one has to come before the other, even if your regional center says otherwise. Okay. So remember that IPPs are going to feel very different in the self-determination program, that you may need more than one IPP. I think I met with my regional center about 3 or 4 times as my son was moving in to the program. And so at least at the beginning, it may require a few meetings, one to negotiate the budget and another to present your person-centered plan and spending plan. And so it's going to feel different, but I think once you're in it, I can tell you that after our first year, my son went into his second year, and my son's IPP meeting lasted about 45 minutes. And I anticipate that maybe the last time I'm really talking to the regional center for a year. So for many regional centers, it means that they're actually going to be working less with self-determination participants over time than they are with traditional consumers. By the way, you will probably need to meet more than once if there is no agreement on your budget amount, because it is where you need to make your case for unmet need or change in circumstances. Remember that your independent facilitator and your person-centered planner can advocate for you at the IPP and help you make your case for a budget change. But remember, your budget can only be changed based on the services that you would receive in the traditional system, not based on services you want to receive in the self-determination program. All right, so moving on to the FMS. So the FMS stands for Financial Management Service. And this is the only service that you are required to have in the self-determination program. It is also the only service that must be vendored or have a contract with your regional center. So that's a really important thing to remember. You must have an FMS. There are not that many FMSs that exist in the state. There are probably, I think about 10 maybe in the state, maybe 8 of them are actually taking clients right now. And your regional center may have even fewer, because not every regional center has vendored or has a contract with every single FMS. So you're going to need to go on the DDS website and look for the list of FMSs that are vendored at your regional center. And you should be calling them. And believe me, we'll have a whole session on this too. You should be calling them and asking them questions about things you should be, about how you want to work with an FMS. So what does the FMS do? They get money from the regional centers for you to pay for your plan, to pay for everything that's in your spending plan. So if you have staff, the staff will be putting in their hours into some sort of timesheet that your FMS has, and then the FMS will pay directly to your workers. They may also, the FMS may also be responsible for paying for your summer camp fee, or your, let's say you want to buy an iPad to communicate. They will be responsible for paying for those things too. They are required by law to give you a monthly accounting of how much you've spent. So each FMS does it differently. Some will email you your budget and how much you've spent. Others have it on a portal where you can download it yourself. And so you want to, maybe as you're trying to find an FMS, you might want to ask what one of those budgets, those monthly reports look like, to see if you're happy with that FMS. They also really try to make sure you don't overspend your budget. Because if you, let's say you have $50,000 to spend in a year, and you spend $48,000 by 10 months in, you only have $2,000 left for the last 2 months. You may have to let go of some of your workers. You may have to not do some of the activities you want to do. So they are there to really help you manage your money, which is very important. They also receive a thumbs up or a thumbs down from the criminal background checks that are required for all of your personal care workers. You should know that anybody who's working directly with the self-determination participant is required by law to get a background check, fingerprint background check. You may also, as a participant, ask for more people to get that background check than just the people who work directly with you, but at a minimum, it has to be those direct care professionals. And the results, not the specific results, but the results of either a thumbs up or a thumbs down comes to the FMS to make sure that your workers can work. Most importantly, they pay taxes for your workers. You know that as an employer, you are required to pay the employer share of taxes for your workers. And what the FMS does is make sure that you are following all laws required to hiring workers, all labor laws, and you also are going to be required to have things like workers' compensation, and they help you with that as well. Okay, so next up, we're going to the spending plan. Spending plan is really such an important and exciting part of self-determination because it is how you want to spend your money in ways for you to achieve your hopes and dreams, right? So the first thing you have to do to create your spending plan is to identify those individuals who you, or the types of individuals you want to help you, the activities you'd like to participate in the community, and any items you might want to purchase. They call this in the self-determination program goods and services. So goods is not really a term that normal people use in the world. It's a real government term, but goods basically means things that you purchase. So you might be buying a new wheel for your or a new battery for your wheelchair. You might be buying an iPad to communicate. You may be purchasing special socks that keep you healthy, that are compression socks. I mean, these are just ideas of things I've heard people purchasing all along. So those are remember that every item you purchase or goods that any good that you purchase has to be related to one of your goals. It can't be, gee, I have some extra money, I'm going to buy a new television set. That television set needs that widescreen TV you don't have a right to buy that widescreen TV. It has to relate to your person-centered plan and to your IPP goals. So if, let's say, you are working from home and you need a larger monitor because of your job or because of job hunting, you have to relate that monitor to that goal, that employment goal. Okay, remember that. So how do you identify those services? You find the people, you find the groups in your community that you want to be part of. Remember that no one has to be a vendor of a regional center or have a contract with a regional center, with the exception of that FMS. So that may mean that you want to take a karate class for exercise. So that karate class does not have to learn how to be a vendor of a regional center. You just find out, let's say the karate class costs $100. You get information about how to pay for it, and you give that information to your FMS. Remember that FMSs don't deal in cash. There's no way that an FMS is ever going to pay for anything in cash. I just heard from an FMS today that that's been a problem. An FMS is also not going to ever show up in person and pay for something, pay for an activity in person for you. Everything has to be paid for either through a check that's sent through the mail or through an online purchase. So please remember that. Remember that some things in your spending plan don't have to cost money. In your person-centered plan, they don't all have to cost money. And so you want to make sure that as you're identifying those goods and services, try to think about activities that are free, that may not end up in your spending plan, but that still help you meet your goals and help you stretch your budget to pay for more things. Remember that you can hire people directly, that you don't have to use an agency that hires people and therefore you're stuck with whoever they send you. You can hire people directly, and you can also fire them if you need to. You are in charge of your own life. You can also join a class or a program. You can change that class or program if you're unhappy with it, just like people without disabilities get to do in their lives. You get to change your mind, and don't let a regional center tell you don't get to. So what is the spending plan specifically? So it is a plan that takes those goods and services, so those people that you purchase, those activities, not people you purchase, those people that you want to hire, those activities that you want to register for, and those items that you want to purchase, you put them all in a plan with dollar amounts. Now, I know that sounds very intimidating, but that's what your person-centered planner and your independent facilitator are going to help you do. You're not by yourself here. You also have your FMS. I can tell you that our FMS was very, very helpful in helping us think through all the taxes and workers' comp and all those issues that we had to make sure got in my son's budget. So you have help figuring this all out. You're not by yourself. Remember that you have to identify every service and make sure that you include the costs of the FMS in your spending plan. And if you want to continue to hire an independent facilitator, those expenses have to be in your spending plan. Your budget will not increase because of the cost of the FMS and independent facilitator. They're not going to add money to your budget. And then obviously all those expenses associated with hiring a worker. So you're going to give your spending plan once it's finished to your regional center. Regional centers do not have to approve your spending plan. They should not be micromanaging every single way you're spending your money, but they do have some responsibilities looking at your spending plan. They review it to make sure that all the services and activities and items that you're purchasing meet the following 3 requirements. First of all, that it is part of what's called the federal waiver. It's a terrible term, but basically a waiver is a contract California has with the federal government to get about 50 cents for every dollar of monies that are being spent on people with developmental disabilities. That exists in the traditional system, and it also exists in the self-determination program. 2, that those expenses cannot be paid for through what's called generic agencies or generic resources. Those are things like school districts, insurance, and Medi-Cal. You should know that regional centers are what's called the payer of last resort. And that means that all other agencies need to pay first, and then the regional centers pay. That is the way it is in the traditional system. It also exists in self-determination. So that means that things like tutoring or tuition for school. Those are supposed to be paid for through the school system, and you cannot pay for that in the self-determination program. So many of you have probably already been rejected for those kinds of services in the traditional system. But you want to make sure that you get that you have exhausted and used all those generic resources first before putting it on your spending plan, because I promise you the regional centers are going to nail you on this. But I don't want you to think of it in a negative way. I want you to think about it in a positive way. Think of generic resources as coupons, as freebies. So let's say you want to buy a computer for your job or that monitor for your job. You should go to the Department of Rehabilitation first, ask, because they exist to be able to pay for equipment for you to be able to work. And so ask them for those resources first. If they say no to you, then you go ahead and put it in your spending plan. But if they say yes for that computer or that monitor, that means that, let's say you were going to pay $300 for that monitor. That means that's $300 extra you can use in the self-determination program to do other really cool things that only self-determination can pay for. Finally, the third thing that regional centers must make sure happens with everything in your spending plan is that all of your services are used in the in integrated settings. So what does that mean? That means that you have to have access to the full community for every service you receive. You should know that this requirement exists for the traditional system, but that doesn't start until March of 2023. But the self-determination program is required to follow that right now, which I think is a good thing, because self-determination should be used to provide inclusion for you. So those are the only three things, by the way, that regional centers are allowed to think about. They're not allowed to say to you, well, you could have done this cheaper. You could have bought a cheaper computer, or you could have bought a cheaper, you could have found a cheaper gym, or you could have found a cheaper staff member and paid your staff less. They don't get to do that. As long as you are staying within your budget, you cannot overspend your budget. So as long as you're staying within your budget, they can only ask you questions about things in your spending plan for 3 areas. Remember, funding from the federal government, that you cannot pay for this through a generic resource, and that it allows for full integration into the community. Now, let me just also add on integration. If you are using this in your home and only in your home, that is still considered integration, because it's paid for through something called home and community-based services. So that means you can use it at home. I heard a regional center reject something because they said that's only going to be at the house, so it's not in the community. Of course, it can be in your home. Lots of people are using staff who only work in the home. So that one drove me a little bit crazy. Remember, if there's a question about your service, the regional center can ask you about that one expense. They cannot put your entire self-determination program on hold because of one expense. All right. We're hearing a lot of problems with this, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this a lot in the weeks in the future. So that is it. That is your journey into self-determination. Once your spending plan is completed, it is attached to your IPP, and it is sent to your FMS or your financial management service, and they are now starting. And they will now start to pay for your self-determination program. So a few other things, like what are your next steps to get into the self-determination program? The first thing you need to do is to call your service coordinator and tell them that you want to be in the self-determination program. You will be required to go through an orientation. Each regional center is doing orientations in different ways. Some of them are they're all online right now. Nothing's in person, but some of them will be will have a recording that you can just watch at your leisure. And some of them will actually be a sort of a webinar or some sort of meeting on Zoom. So before COVID and after COVID, there's likely to be options to be in person as well. And you will have chances to ask lots of questions, okay? But you must go through orientation before you go into the self-determination program. You should also be asking for the last 12 months of expenses and set a date for your budget meeting with your regional center. So that last 12 months of expenses is called cost statement or overview of budget. Each regional center calls it something different. You should be able to get that from your service coordinator within 1 or 2 days. They should not tell you, oh, this is going to take forever. Every regional center is required to provide that on demand. Okay, so you should be able to get the last 12 months of expenses. Then you need to figure out if you have unmet need and where that would be, or if you have a change in circumstance in advance of your budget meeting with your regional center. Next thing you want to do is to find a person-centered planner or independent facilitator. I know that a lot of you are looking for lists of those. You should know that DVU is politically opposed to lists in the self-determination program, because then it seems like it's the traditional system where here's your list of 10 independent facilitators who work in our area and you have to choose from that list. You should not have to do that. There are some wonderful independent facilitators around the state. There's actually an independent facilitator network where they meet together once a month and share information and learn together. Parents and self-advocates are allowed to go to those meetings. It's a great way for you to listen to how people talk, and you might hear someone that you might want to interview. The other thing that you can do is you can go to, you can think about someone who's in your life, maybe one of your former teachers, maybe one of your former staff, who you just really think knows you and that you trust. To become you could ask them to be your independent facilitator. If they are not yet trained in self-determination, they can become trained very quickly. You should know that lots of people, the state council, regional centers, the Autism Society of Los Angeles, and many other groups are doing independent facilitator trainings around the state. They are doing them online, so you can join from anywhere. So if you have someone who you think would make a great facilitator for you, just get them trained up on the self-determination program. But there's also really very wonderful people who are part of this network that I was telling you about. You want to start thinking about that circle of support that you're going to have. You want these people who you know and trust to be part of your person-centered planning. Another thing I would recommend is to go to your local advisory committee meetings. Each regional center has a local advisory committee. You should be able to find out when those meet by going to your regional center website and looking up self-determination. Most of those committees meet once a month. A few meet every other month. Some of those committees are very wonderful, active folks. Some of them are less active, and the staff at the regional center actually control what happens on the committee level, but most of them are really wonderful, and I encourage you. And in fact, the chairs of each one of those committees sit on a statewide advisory committee that meets 4 times a year as a big group, but is very active. Rick Wood is the chair of the statewide self-determination advisory committee. He's here today joining our SDP Connect. So if any of you have any questions for him, we'll be happy to bring him on screen and let him answer any questions for you. We have lots of additional resources that Ed has put in the chat. We have 2 books that we have published about self-determination that I recommend highly. We don't make really a profit off of them, so we encourage you to purchase them. We have one called Think Outside the Box. It is a manual on self-determination. It has everything you could ever want. We also have a second book called Profiles in Self-Determination, which is more a small book that's an easy reader. Let me see if I can find it. Yes, it's right here in my drawer. It's called Profiles in Self-Determination. Features the stories of people in the pilot program, which is a 20-year program. We've been around self-determination for over 20 years as a test in 5 regional centers. And it also features 10 people on how their lives change under self-determination. We also have what's called the Self-Determination Interchange, or the interchange.org. I just went into the chat, and you can go on there, get lots of information, ask questions, meet other people, go on there as much as you want. There's a forum. We have SDP Connect every Wednesday, and feel free to go onto the Interchange, by the way, and you can see the videos of every single one of our previous, I think we've done 33 SDP Connects over the last year, and you'll be able to see all of the previous ones that we have done. So I believe that is my last slide. We went a little bit longer than we wanted to, but we actually got it done in less than an hour, which is amazing. So I see that we already have some questions. I've seen a little bit that people are sending me private messages. I should say this at the beginning. I am unable to see any of your private messages while I run this meeting. And the private messages are not saved when everything in the chat is saved, but not the private messages. So I encourage you, if you have a question, to either raise your hand or ask it more publicly through the chat, because I can't look at you all and read private messages. So thank you all. Okay, so let's start with Dallas. I'm going to ask you to unmute. So go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. My question is, regional center has a set rate, what they pay parent vendors, or vendor conversions, or just regular providers. I know that the vendors, the regular providers, are able to ask for more money depending on the situation with the clients and need for the clients, depending on rural areas. Is that going to be available for in the self-determination program?
Yes. So that would be an unmet need or a change in circumstance. So let's say that you have a person who becomes very ill and needs additional supports. In the traditional system, the provider might go to the regional center and say, we really need to have 2-on-1 with them, or we really need to have additional staff coming in, or nursing staff. That request, instead of coming from a provider, is now coming from you. You can change your budget in the middle of your year because of that change in circumstance. No, so yes, that is definitely available to you.
I'm sorry. I think you misunderstood my question. So what they're paying are consumers, or a parent vendor, or a parent vendor conversion, compared into a regular vendor, a home health agency, let's per se. They're allowed, the vendors or the providers, the home health agencies, are allowed to ask regional center for more money per rate, let's say for a PA or home health aid. So in the self-determination program, is that going to be allowed too? Because say a regular parent vendor is getting $28 and change per hour for a regular aid, right? Let's say a non-licensed aid, but a home health agency can receive a much higher rate. Is that going to be available for the self-determination people?
Right. So first of all, in self-determination, you have no rates, but in establishing your budget, you should be using whatever's been spent on you the last 12 months. If you have unmet need, and let's say you've been using a parent vendor at $25 per hour, but you really needed LVN that really bills at $40 an hour, you will need to make the case for that LVN rate to go into your individual budget. Once it goes into your budget, it's just a dollar amount, and you can pay staff whatever you want as long as you stay within your budget. I hope that helped. Yeah, rates don't
some-
exist in self-determination, but rates do exist when it comes to creating the individual budget amount. So if you are not getting the services you need in the traditional system, you need to make the case in your budget meeting for getting that additional amount of money into your budget because your needs were not being met.
Well, I'm saying like we get an annual review of, or an annual sheet telling us how much our vendors are getting paid. If some of us actually I take a look at it and see what the rate is they're getting paid. So they're getting paid a whole lot more for, non-licensed providers than the $28 and change that they're doing with the self-determination. So that's where I'm asking.
Right. There's no rates in self-determination again. So if you're looking at how much is being paid for you, you're getting that money. So if a provider's making $40 an hour and that $40 an hour goes into your budget, not anything lower than that. So
okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, remember, budgets are just a dollar amount.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Julie. Let me ask you to unmute. Okay, go ahead, Julie.
Okay, all right, so I'm new at this and my independent facilitator is not on this call, so I'm asking the question. So my daughter was supposed to go, she's in Inland Regional, and she was supposed to have her budget done this Wednesday, all right? This is the second time it got delayed. So they're telling me that they only meet once a week on Wednesday in the afternoon. So I just wanted to make sure that was, so I don't know what I don't know, so I need to be able to push back. Is that?
Who's only meeting once a week?
The SD Compliance Committee.
There's an SD Compliance Committee? Rick Wood. Can you believe they have an SD? I'm going to let you stay unmuted, Rick, so you can chime in whenever you need to. But okay, I can't believe that there's actually such a thing as a self-determination compliance committee at any regional center, because remember, it's all supposed to be person-centered.
Right.
So the decisions are supposed to be made at the IPP, at the individual program plan meeting, and not at some SD compliance committee that you are not even at that meeting, because I'm assuming you're not at that meeting, right?
That was the second question, is they say we can't go to that meeting. So we had a IPP and we had our person-centered plan, and we even went to our budget, and my lady has her boss there and everything looks hunky-dory. But now they have to go to this committee, and we ask ahead of time to make sure that we were on the list for this committee, but now it's getting pushed back. My daughter's supposed to start college on the 23rd. I'm like, so I don't know like how much I can push back, like, what is this? You know what I mean? And we're not allowed to go. So my daughter's graduated from high school. So there's a lot of unmet needs, but my budget's pretty big, but my daughter's very, very active. She was in high school with three different committees that she was on at school, after program things. So there's a lot of unmet needs. So, but we hammered that out when we all three got together, all four of us got together, and we said, okay, this budget looks good. But now we have to go to this, they call it the SD Compliance Committee.
So what do you think, Rick?
Well, I thought I had heard everything until now. I learned something new today. First of all, that isn't something that is in the law. That isn't a structure that is part of self-determination. And I'm sure Judy is interested as well in which regional center it is, because I'd love to explore it through the local advisory committee. And obviously the chair of your local advisory committee is part of the statewide committee, which I chair. So I'd love to hear from you. I am so surprised. And I don't know what it is, other than the fact that that is directly contrary to the principles of self-determination, the concept of self-determination, and I just cannot imagine that something like that exists. If it does, we need to dig in and find out what this is about, because that clearly is a barrier that must be overcome.
Okay. I can tell you it's Inland Regional Center here, and I'm in Eastvale, California. And everything's gone smoothly up until now. I've been working on this since March, but I know it didn't open up till July. but we were ready. We were ready. July 1st, we had it all ready. And then it's just kind of since then, I know it's only been 3 weeks, but we met together with my service coordinator and her boss, and we went over the person center plan. Then we went over the budget. There was a couple little questions on the budget, mileage, different things like that, but we seemed to get all that hammered out. And I'm like, okay, I thought we were ready to go. And now we had to go to this committee thing. And my independent facilitator has run into this before though, too.
Yeah, and it looks like yours is not the only regional center. Some people are writing in the chat. The Regional Center of Orange County has a self-determination resource group. They're very good at calling things very nice names, as opposed to compliance, which sounds very, very bureaucratic. But I would like an explanation of how a committee outside of the IPP process is making any decisions about an individual.
Right.
That is, to me, it's against the Lanterman Act. It's not just against the self-determination law, but it's also against the Lanterman Act. So Rick and I are serving on this group that's meeting with DDS on Friday, and we will bring this up to DDS because this is quite a concern. All right, stay on with us, Rick, in case there's another question.
Sure.
Marcia, go ahead.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
in South Orange County with Regional Center there. One of my concerns, I want to move my son in the self-determination, is that I love inclusion, but in my son's case, sometimes what he wants to do is with people who also have a special need. He enjoys their company. He knows them through being with them in school and different programs. So he, for example, enjoys very much a class they go at Hcba College that is Adaptive PE. They have different classes. And that is a chance for him to see his friends, to socialize, to follow instructions. And it seems to me that now the law is just going through full inclusion. But if it's self-determination and what you want to do and your choice is sometimes to be people who also have a special need, what the hell is wrong with that?
So you should know that this is coming to the whole regional center system. This is not just self-determination. This was
No, I hear about this law. And I mean,
so it's a federal rule. It's not, it's saying, what it's saying is that it's not that people with disabilities can't spend time with other people with disabilities. It's not saying that. What it is saying is that the federal government is not going to pay for a program or a service where you're spending all of your day with people with disabilities and the people who are paid to be with you. Now,
no, this is not all his day.
Right. So if you have a 1-hour class, I have heard potentially that's going to be fine. So let's say you're doing a 1-hour class once a week. Where, here's an example. My son goes to a class that is, by the way, it is private pay. So if you're going to a class where everyone has a disability, but everyone else is paying privately and you're using self-determination money, then it's fine because that program is not paid for by regional center funds. So it's not so much that you're spending the day with regional center with people with disabilities, is that you're spending the day with a regional center funded program. So what they're really looking for are things like those big work programs, those big day programs for adults, a group home where you have no freedom or control of your life, an intermediate care facility, a nursing home. Those are the things that they are targeting with you, not a once a week swim class with a group of people with disabilities. That's not what they're talking about.
So that's
okay?
Our class is still will keep receiving funding so they can offer these classes.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Now, if we go back to segregation, as much as yes, I believe in inclusion, I always try to include my child, there is some people that will need a group home. There is some parents who cannot be as involved, and I'm very concerned about that population.
So group homes are still allowed, Marta. It's just the people who live in those group homes have to have choice and control over their lives. So what that means is they are not forced to have a roommate that they don't like. They are not forced to live with people that they don't like. They are not forced to have staff that they don't like.
Well,
That they can eat when they want, what they want. So most group homes you live in, you eat breakfast at 8, lunch at 12, and dinner at 6. And if you don't like spaghetti, we don't care. That means you don't eat.
Yeah.
So it's not that you can't live in a group home. It's that group home has to provide freedom to the person who lives in the group home.
I love that, but who is going to supervise that? Because at this moment,
The regional centers are supposed to.
they are not.
Of
They
course.
are not. Because right now, with more simple rules, they are not supervising.
Right. Well, that's because in the traditional system, group homes do not have to follow the rule yet.
Yes, but these other rules they have to follow that also. They are
right.
not
So in
being
right. So let's say you have a group home where those rules are not being followed in the traditional system, but you have one of the people who lives in that group home, they go into the self-determination program. That group home is going to have to change things for that one individual, or that individual needs to move out of that group home. So things need to change. So like I'm looking right now, my dear friend, Howard McBroom. So Howard McBroom lives in a fabulous apartment building where every single person who lives in that building receives services from regional centers. So you would think on the surface, oh, he is not able to be in the self-determination program. But you have to go into his life to know that everybody has their own apartment. Everybody lives separate lives. Nobody does anything as a group. Everyone chooses who they want to support them. Everyone has their own activities, their own jobs during the day. People live completely individualized, person-centered lives where Howard lives, but he still lives in this community. That's pretty great. So that is the way that the future is going to be for everyone in who receives services from regional centers. But right now, people in self-determination have to live those wonderful free lives. Okay. I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Ron Allen, go ahead.
My question is to the guy that is in charge of the big committee.
The guy who's in charge of what, Ron?
The big committee.
You mean Rick Wood?
Yep.
You want to ask Rick a question?
Yep.
Can you unmute yourself, Rick, or do I have to?
Got it, Judy.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I'm happy to try to answer it.
Do you remember me?
I do.
Okay. Have you guys seen the new movie that I made?
No. What movie have you made, Ron? I would love to see it.
So,
Okay. What you got to do is call Central Valley Region and tell them that you want to talk to one of the persons in charge of the self-determination, and then they will send you the movie.
So, Ron, how about Rick and I be in touch with you after this? Because if you've made a movie about self-determination, we want to see it. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Wonderful.
yeah, and I think, Ron, I remember that movie was played at one of the trainings that we did that your regional center attended.
This is another one.
Oh, you have a new one.
Yeah. That's
Oh, good.
great.
Excellent. Well, I'd love to see it. I enjoyed the first one. So we'll see if we can retrieve that movie. I hope it's on YouTube so others can see it as well.
That's great. Thanks, Ron. Excited. Ron, are you still chair of your local advisory committee? I think Ron's chair of his committee. Okay, I'm going to go. Ed, do we have a lot of questions in the chat?
Oh, so many, Judy. So many.
We'll try to take a few in the last 10 minutes.
Okay, so I have a question from Johnny. Do we have a directive from DDS on social rec? If so, where's the docs on it?
Yeah, there is no directive yet from DDS on social rec, unfortunately. So for those of you who don't know this, there was in the budget that was just signed a couple of weeks ago, the governor has reestablished funding for people who receive services in the traditional system to be able to purchase social and recreational programs and camp and non-medical therapies and some school activities too. And so how that's going to work is unclear. I hope that somebody at DDS is working on this. I will certainly ask that question, but nothing yet has been sent to regional centers on. Go ahead, Ed.
Cool. So the next one that we've got is we have an anonymous question. My regional center is giving me a lot of problems. We were part of the pilot program. We are still not in self-determination today. It's meeting after meeting with no resolution. They are asking for assessments before we can move forward with our SD. Sorry, just started breathing through my diaphragm for some reason. I have requested NOA. I have asked for documentation. Nothing is happening. What is my resource? Thank you so much. There's a lot more that's happening. Regional center is giving me a lot of problems.
So, you know, this is where this portal, this feedback portal that we're going to create will hopefully be helpful, because we would really love to know which regional center you're talking about so that we can be more specific. I would highly recommend you go to your local self-determination advisory committee and express your concerns. Their role is to provide oversight of how the self-determination program is being rolled out in your regional center. So if you were having all these problems and you were selected for the phase-in even a couple of years ago and you still can't move in, somebody needs to be telling your local advisory committee and explain to them what the problems are that you're having. So that would be my suggestion. Anything else that you can think of, Rick?
Well, yeah, I think that, first of all, that's the correct advice. And I would also suggest that your independent facilitator go with you to that meeting. Because the independent facilitator will be able to articulate what the specific issue is, even if you can't. The two of you together, I think, would make a better team than if you were just there together. Independent facilitators hopefully have experience that that they could bring to that process. But absolutely, go to the local advisory committee meeting and listen. Staff is there at these meetings. Sometimes the executive director of the regional center is present, and so you're not only speaking to the committee, but you're voicing an issue that then becomes public that staff is going to be forced to respond to. And you don't take no for an answer from staff, and you don't say, don't be satisfied with, well, gee, we'll look into it, we'll get back to you. You need to press on this, because that's a barrier. We're experiencing it throughout the system, so it's not unusual, but that's where I would start.
Thanks, Rick. Go ahead, Ed.
Yes. So our next question that we've got is, I would like to, from Jacqueline. Hi, I would like to ask if regional center can be out of compliance if our IPP is not updated yet. We moved into a different location, but the same county. Our IPP has not been updated because of schedule of SDRC case supervisor and the SC. They always go together. Then we lost the SC and the supervisor mostly on leave. When I told them I'm going to hire an independent facilitator to focus on my son's person-centered plan, they're now rushing me to update the IPP.
Yeah, sadly, I hear these stories all the time of service coordinators quitting and they never tell you at your regional center. And so you don't then have a service coordinator. I've heard, service coordinators going out maternity leave for extended period of time. Nobody tells you. You are required by the Lanterman Act to have a service coordinator at all times, because you never know when you're going to go into crisis and need the regional center. You all should know that the regional centers received a hell of a lot of money out of the state budget. They got $7.8 million to hire 60 new staff across the state just to work on self-determination. They're called participants' choice specialists. They're receiving money over the next year to hire 900 new service coordinators across the state of California. So they have been begging for more service coordinators and more staff. They are rolling in the dough right now at regional centers. And so, in my opinion, in the next year, as they continue to expand and continue to grow, which is the opposite of what we believe needs to happen, we believe that our services need to grow and that the bureaucracy behind it needs to shrink. But they are going to have no excuses anymore in serving us and answering our phone calls and meeting our needs. So we hope that this problem will be dealt with. We may have a chance for maybe one or two more questions, Ed.
Oh, sorry, I was talking and I was muted. Next question that we've got from Sandra. Right now, Regional Center pays my Taylor Day and respite workers mileage along with pay per hour. Mm-hmm. If I switched over to self-determination, is the mileage paid for?
So you can pay for anything that meets your IPP goals, remember, and your IPP goals are informed by your person-centered plan. So if in fact, it shouldn't relate to the traditional system, but if your provider requires mileage to be paid, then you should do that. Here's my take on this. You can take it or leave it. I don't pay mileage for my providers. I pay my providers, I pay my son's providers a really good salary so that it doesn't come down to how far away they live or how close they live to our home. You should be giving people a really good wage based on the budget that you have, and therefore they will be able to afford to pay for their gas getting to and from your home. You should not be paying people, minimum wage to work for you. That's the whole great thing about self-determination, is that you have the flexibility to take all those administrative fees and use it for things like paying higher wages.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Oh, would you like another question from chat?
Yes, one more.
Got it. Let me scan to the next one. Does the regional center take into account the hours, and I'm sorry, this is an anonymous one. Does the regional center take into account the hours that you are getting from the Hcba Waiver Program? I understand that we would lose the Hcba waiver once switching to self-determination.
Yeah, this is, where's Christina Canarella, who is the absolute expert on this. I'm going to ask her to answer that question because she has done all the research on this. Christina, are you around?
Yes, I am. And we've been told the same thing, that we have to leave the Hcba waiver in order to be in the self-determination program. However, that being said, whatever you are receiving under the Hcba waiver, so if you had waiver personal care service, which would coincide with personal assistance under the traditional service, then those, you need to let regional center know that would be considered unmet need. That was not paid for previously in your budget because it was paid for under the Hcba waiver by the Department of Healthcare Services. So you won't lose services. You're just going to need to get them paid for under a different entity, if that hopefully makes sense.
That's super helpful, Christina. That's the best explanation I've heard of it because it's always been very confusing to me. So thank you, Christina. It is almost 6 o'clock and our interpreters leave at 6. And so we are committed to always having Spanish and Korean interpretation. All of the things that were in the chat, we're going to record and make sure that we answer in future SDP Connects. We'll be together again next week where we'll be talking. I believe we're going next week. Is that right, Ed? I can't remember if we were.
I believe we are having one next week.
Yeah, I know that at some point, maybe starting soon, we're going to go to every other week just to sort of reduce our stress on all of our staff. But next week, we're going to get into that budget development, how to make the case for unmet need or change in circumstances, because it's very, very clear how it should work. And yet regional centers make it very confusing for you. So I'm sorry to all of those who we could not answer your questions today. We promise we will get to them next week. We will make our presentation much shorter because it's just about one particular area. But thank you, Rick Wood, for joining us today. Hope you can do so in the future, and take care, everybody. Have a great week.